Reborn at 15 on the mountain, I told the pursuers. I'm blind. Saw nothing. Play the full story in one go. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. The exciting story begins right now. The sharp pain in my chest receded like a tide. No longer did the howling mountain winds and the dull thud of blades piercing flesh ring in my ears. Instead, there was the sound of fine rain and the fresh scent of earth. I snapped my eyes open, gasping greedily for air. Beneath my palms were damp moss and coarse gravel, my fingernails packed with fresh soil. I raised my trembling hands, and what met my eyes was a blur of silhouettes. The trees 2 chang away had dissolved into overlapping green shadows. Only this uprooted bupleurum close by managed to piece together a clear outline in my field of vision. It was that early morning when I was 15, gathering herbs on the back slopes of Suaping Mountain. On this day in my past life, in my simple-mindedness, I had panicked when faced with that sudden group of thugs and pointed toward the western mountain path. But what awaited me was not mercy, but a cold, piercing blade. That sword drove straight through my chest, splashing warm blood onto the blades of grass. They kicked me off the cliff like a piece of trash. In those final moments, as I plummeted into the abyss and clung to life while snagged on the branches of the mountain trees, I heard the group talking above the cliff. Chief, the girl pointed the right way. The bloodstains on the ground are indeed heading west. Hurry up! The third prince has already launched a coup in the capital and poisoned the old emperor. Now, Crown Prince Yingyue has caught wind of this and is rushing back to the capital to purge the court. This path is his only way north. His Highness has ordered that Yingyue must not leave these mountains alive. Those words, every single one of them, felt like a branding iron searing into my soul. I only had time to grasp their meaning before I closed my eyes amidst endless cold and agonizing pain. And now, I have been reborn. From the mountain path below, the sudden sound of startled birds took flight, followed by the harsh rustling of underbrush being violently pushed aside. Those hurried, heavy footsteps were approaching the mountainside where I stood, step by step, just as they had in my previous life. They are here. My entire body trembled uncontrollably, but my reason forcibly suppressed the fear. It was already too late to run. A weak woman who was nearly blind could never outrun a group of well-trained assassins in the deep mountains. I took a deep breath and quickly dumped the herbs from my basket onto the ground, scattering them everywhere. I disheveled my hair and smeared the mud from the ground harshly onto my face and clothes. I have suffered from a severe eye ailment since childhood, and my vision is extremely blurred. To cure me, my master, Ji Tsung, spent years fumigating my eyes with pungent herbs. As a result, while I can barely see things up close, I have grown accustomed to an out-of-focus gaze when looking at people. My hearing is unnaturally sharp, and my movements possess a strange slowness whenever I feel my way around. This is my best disguise. Halt! A thunderous shout exploded from up ahead. I trembled all over and let my body collapse onto the ground. My hands fumbled blindly in the mud until I grabbed a withered branch to hold in front of me, crying out with a sob in my voice. Who's there? Don't hit me. Please don't hit me. Thud, thud, thud. Heavy soap-soled boots stepped onto the withered branches and fallen leaves, coming to a halt less than 3 feet in front of me. A pungent scent of blood, mingled with the dampness of the rain, rushed toward my face. I did not look up to see his face. In fact, within my field of vision, there was only a tall, blurred dark shadow. I tilted my head slightly, aiming my right ear in his direction, my unfocused gaze drifting past his shoulder to land on the empty void. Lift your head. A voice rang out, so cold it lacked even a trace of warmth. It was Huan Song. Trembling, I raised my head, my eyes wide and vacant. With no focus in my pupils, I allowed the rain to soak my eyelashes. A cold steel blade, carrying a suffocating chill, was suddenly pressed against the side of my neck. The blade exerted a slight pressure, its sharp edge instantly slicing through the skin, and a trickle of warm blood slid down my neck and into my collar. Did you just see a heavily injured man run past? Huan Song's voice was extremely soft, yet it resembled a venomous snake flicking its tongue, carrying an irresistible intent to kill. I burst into tears of terror, my hands flailing wildly in the air while skillfully avoiding the edge of his blade, grasping only at the void. Hero, spare my life. This humble girl cannot see. I have been blind since childhood. I didn't see anything. Boo-hoo. Please don't kill me. I only came here to gather herbs for my master. A blind girl? Huan Song snorted coldly, sounding deeply suspicious. He suddenly raised his hand, the steel blade in his grip whistling through the air as it lunged straight for my eyes. 2 inches. 1 inch. The tip of the blade came to a dead stop just a hair's breadth away from my eyeball. I could feel the icy, metallic killing intent causing my eyelids to twitch violently, but I gritted my teeth and forced my eyes wide open, keeping my pupils unfocused and refusing to blink even once. I knew that a truly blind person would have no reaction to such a sudden visual threat. I simply continued to tilt my head as if listening, my body trembling like a fallen leaf in the autumn wind, as I wailed, "Good sir, the thing in your hand is so cold. Please, have mercy on me. My master is still waiting for me to go back and decoct his medicine." Huan Song stared fixedly into my eyes. Only after confirming that my pupils showed no sign of constricting from fear did he slowly withdraw his blade. "Chief, she's just a blind girl. Don't waste any more time on her. The Crown Prince's blood trail cut off to the west. We need to search there immediately," a subordinate whispered urgently from beside him. Huan Song glanced at me again, his gaze like he was scrutinizing a lifeless object. A blind girl is useless to keep around. Kill her and be done with it, lest she be an eyesore, Huan Song ordered coldly. My heart instantly leaped into my throat. My fingers hidden within my sleeves digging hard into my palms. Was the tragedy of my past life about to repeat itself? No. I must save myself. Just now there was the sound of a great wind blowing past to the east. I shouted, flailing my arms as if driven mad by their words. Such a huge gust of wind, and the sound of branches snapping, right there in that mountain gully to the east. My ears are the sharpest on ordinary days. I definitely didn't hear it wrong, someone must have run off to the east. Huan Song's movements came to a sudden halt. He turned his head sharply, looking toward the east. "Chief, Prince Yingyue is cunning. It is indeed highly likely that he deliberately left bloodstains in the west while actually heading east," a subordinate analyzed. Huan Song stared at me and asked in a cold voice, "Are you sure it was the east?" "I'm sure. It was definitely the east." The sound was very heavy, snapping many dry branches. Heading toward the deep valley in the east. I nodded while weeping, my body constantly shrinking back. "Go. Head east." Huan Song hesitated no longer. Sheathing his long blade, he and his subordinates turned into several dark shadows, vanishing instantly into the dense forest to the east. It wasn't until the surrounding footsteps had completely faded away that I collapsed into the mud, my strength spent, gasping for air in great gulps. Cold sweat had long since drenched the back of my clothes, mixing with the rainwater to create a chilling, sticky sensation. I had won the gamble. I successfully lured those killers away using the commotion to the east. But I also knew they would soon realize they had been tricked. Once they discovered there was no sign of the Crown Prince to the east, they would inevitably double back. I must hurry. I propped myself up and stood, not bothering to brush the mud off my clothes. The information I had heard in my past life flashed through my mind. Crown Prince Yingyue must be hiding to the west right now, the very direction those people were actually tracking in my previous life. I took a deep breath to steady my frantic heartbeat. Relying on my familiarity with every plant and cave in these vast mountains, I tread through the muddy fallen leaves. Guided only by the faint, blurred visibility, I stumbled my way toward the hidden valley to the west. The rain intensified, large droplets drumming against the forest leaves with a rhythmic patter. I knew that although this rain was bone-chillingly cold, it was a godsend. It would swiftly wash away the bloodstains and footprints on the mountain paths, leaving the returning pursuers disoriented. But I must find that man before the rain thoroughly washes everything away. Relying on memory, I stumbled and groped my way toward the rocky gully to the west. Due to my congenital visual impairment, any vegetation beyond 2 yards was nothing more than a blurred overlap of shadows in my eyes. Yet, because of this, my senses of hearing and smell were several times sharper than those of an ordinary person. The rain hammered into the soil, kicking up a heavy, earthy scent. and within that scent lingered a trace of blood, faint, yet incredibly thick. This was not the blood of a wild beast. Animal blood carries a gamey odor. This was human blood, exuding a sacrilegious aroma of ambergris, as if it had been stained with cinnabar. In my past life, the pursuer said the crown prince's blood trail went cold in the west. The terrain to the west was steep and filled with jagged rocks, where an ordinary person could easily lose their footing. There was only one hidden crevice known as a slice of sky, so well concealed that an ordinary woodcutter would never discover it. I followed the faint scent of blood, groping along the rock wall as I moved forward. The stones beneath my fingertips were slick and icy. Suddenly, my toe struck a hard object. I crouched down, searching through the muddy water until my fingers closed around a fragment of a broken jade pendant. The texture was warm and smooth, the carving intricate to the extreme. This was an imperial artifact from the palace. He was indeed here. Without a moment's hesitation, I took a deep breath, pushed aside the head-high boneless grass, and squeezed sideways into that narrow crevice in the rock. Inside, it was pitch black, though to me, there was little difference between darkness and daylight. I lightened my steps, inching inward while pressing my body almost flush against the damp stone wall. "Who's there?" A low, raspy voice suddenly cut through the darkness, sounding like a dying lone wolf in the dead of night, utterly weak, yet carrying an unquestionable authority and murderous intent. I froze instantly, my hands instinctively rising with palms facing forward in a defensive yet harmless gesture. I widened my eyes as far as they would go, but intentionally kept my pupils unfocused, merely tilting my head slightly toward the sound and angling my right ear in his direction. Don't hurt me." I forced my voice to tremble with terror, adopting the cowardice expected of a simple mountain girl. "Mercy, brave warrior. I'm just a herb gatherer from the village below. I only came in here to escape the rain." In the darkness, that heavy, ragged breathing hitched slightly. I could feel his gaze sweeping over my face and body like a hawk's. He was clearly trying to discern whether I was an enemy or a spy. "You can't see?" There was a hint of suspicion in his voice, yet the tip of his sword did not move. "I can see a little bit." I shrank back, my voice trembling with a sob, but I can only make out rough outlines. "My father and master both say I'm half blind." "Brave warrior, there's a scent of blood on you. Are you badly hurt?" I have some freshly picked blatilla and sanchi in my bag. They can stop the bleeding." With that, my hands trembling, I fumbled to untie the medicine pouch from my waist and thrust it haphazardly in his direction. Because I couldn't see clearly, my hand slammed directly into the blade of his sword. The sharp edge sliced through my palm instantly, and blood began to flow. I let out a soft cry of pain and instinctively pulled my hand back. The medicine pouch fell to the ground with a thud, scattering the herbs inside. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I really didn't mean to." I crouched down in a panic, groping through the muddy water for the herbs. Tears welled in my eyes, my performance as convincing as it could possibly be. Perhaps it was my blindness, or perhaps it was my clumsiness and the blood on my palm, but this suspicious noble finally lowered his guard, if only by a fraction. The tip of the sword slowly lowered. What followed was a heavy, muffled groan, and the sound of a weight collapsing to the ground. "Hey, hero? Are you all right?" My heart tightened. Abandoning my pretense, I hurriedly felt my way toward the sound. My hands groped across the cold ground until they finally brushed against a burning, rigid body. His clothes were soaked through with rain and blood, feeling thick and sticky to the touch. I placed my fingers against the side of his neck. His pulse was erratic and racing, a sign of excessive blood loss and an impending high fever. "Sir, wake up!" I shook his shoulder firmly, whispering urgently into his ear. "It's not safe here. A group of armed men just entered the mountains and are searching everywhere. They'll be here soon. Let me take you away. My master is a physician. He can save you." At the mention of armed men searching the mountains, the semi-conscious Yingjue's body suddenly stiffened. Relying on sheer willpower, he forced himself upright against the rock wall. "Go." His voice was hoarse, that single word exhausting every ounce of his strength. I fumbled to drape his arm over my shoulder, bracing his body firmly against my own narrow frame. He was exceptionally tall and heavy, pressing nearly his entire weight onto me. I gritted my teeth, my legs trembling, forcing myself to stay upright and not collapse. This way. There's a small trail through the mountain here with thick vegetation. They won't find us, I whispered into his ear. Guided by faint vision and memory, I led him step by step as we shuffled out from the crevice in the rocks. I don't know how long we walked, but the mountain path ahead gradually leveled out, and a faint scent of medicinal herbs began to drift through the wind and rain. I knew that my master's thatched medical clinic was just ahead. At that moment, the wicker gate of the thatched cottage creaked open. "Master!" I cried out, my voice hoarse and my strength nearly spent. Through the wind and rain, the gray figure moved. My master, Ji Tsung, lunged down the steps. Those withered hands that usually clutched a wine flask were now as steady as rock, catching the man from my shoulders who had felt as heavy as 1,000 pounds. "Nonsense! How could you bring a living person back?" Master barked in a low voice, his tone filled with anxiety and reproach. But as he took the man from me, his palm inadvertently brushed against the wet, sticky blood on the man's lapel, and his expression shifted abruptly. "Inside, now." Master asked no further questions, half carrying and half dragging the man into the inner chamber. My legs gave out, and I collapsed directly into the muddy water. But rationality forced me to brace myself against the ground and stand up, reaching back to slam the wooden door of the clinic shut and slide the bolt into place. "Yingyue, come hold the lamp. Get the fire starter lit," Master shouted from the inner chamber. I took a deep breath, skillfully struck the flint to spark the stone, blew the oil lamp into a glow, and hurried into the inner chamber holding the lampstand. The dim, yellow light illuminated the bed. The man lay flat on the bamboo couch, his face as pale as paper, with traces of wet blood still clinging to the corners of his mouth. A large smear of dark red blood stained his chest, and through his tattered clothes, a wound so deep it exposed the bone was visible. Master had already cut open his lapel and was cleaning the wound with clean, warm water. When he saw the shape of the injury, Master's fingers suddenly stiffened, and his gaze instantly became extremely grave. This was caused by a double-edged, narrow-leaf steel blade unique to the military. The wound is long and narrow, deep enough to reach the ribs. The person who did this intended to kill with a single blow. Master looked up, his clear, sharp eyes staring intently at me. "Yingyue, tell me the truth. Where exactly did you find this person? What happened in the mountains?" Holding the lampstand, my gaze drifted vacantly over Master's shoulder, settling on the empty air. I tucked my hand, cut by the blade and still dripping blood, further into my sleeve, deliberately feigning extreme shock. My voice trembled as I replied, "Master, I went to the crevices of the West Mountain today to gather pseudo ginseng. Just as I reached the vicinity of a slice of sky, I heard a faint moaning from within. I couldn't see clearly, so I could only crouch down to feel around, and ended up with hands full of blood. I thought of the healer's benevolence. You always teach me. I couldn't just leave him to die. And the mountains were so terrifying just now. There were many people with bright, flashing blades. I was so scared that I hurried to carry him back. I lied. In this lifetime, I cannot display anything beyond the knowledge of a half-blind little physician. I must not mention a single word about the third prince or the crown prince that would only bring a fatal disaster upon Master." Master looked at me, his gaze falling on my right sleeve. He grabbed my wrist and pulled my right hand out. The wound on my palm, sliced open by the longsword, was not deep, but it looked startling against my fair skin. "What happened to your hand?" There was a hint of suppressed anger in Master's voice. I accidentally brushed against that iron thing he was holding. I pulled my neck back and lowered my head timidly. "Master, it doesn't hurt. Please, save him quickly." When I was carrying him back just now, it felt like he was about to stop breathing. If he dies in our clinic and those men with swords come looking for him, we won't be able to explain ourselves. Fine. Karma is ordained by heaven. Since he has entered the door of Ji Tsung, he is a life to be saved. Master let go of my hand and turned to take a set of gold needles from the medicine cabinet. Yingyue, go get the frost-severing powder from the bottom drawer of the cabinet and boil a pot of water. As Master gave the instructions, her hand moved like lightning, precisely piercing 3 golden needles into the major acupoints on the man's chest. Yes, Master. I turned around skillfully, accurately pulling open the medicine drawer on the far left of the bottom row to retrieve the packet of frost-severing powder, a blend ground from precious snow lotus and borneol. By the time I returned to the bedside with the medicinal powder and warm water, Master had already stopped his bleeding. The golden needles quivered slightly under the lamplight, and the man's previously rapid and weak breathing finally grew steady and deep. I stood by the bedside, and by the light of the lamp, I finally caught a clear glimpse of this noble figure, the man who had lost his life in my past existence because of a single word of mine, but whom I had now saved with my own hands. The Crown Prince's features were exceptionally sharp, possessing a handsome quality defined by a commanding, formidable aura. Even now, imprisoned by his circumstances and unconscious from severe injuries, his brow remained tightly knit, and the fingers of his right hand were instinctively curled, as if ready to draw a sword against an enemy at any moment. This was a man of immense mental fortitude, tempered on the razor's edge of life and death. His life is saved for the time being, but the wound is extremely deep. He will certainly develop a high fever tonight. Master wiped the blood from his hands, his brow furrowing even deeper. The people hunting him are no ordinary bandits. Yingyue, are you certain no one saw you when you carried him back? I shook my head and said softly, no, the rain was too heavy. Besides, I told them there was movement in the eastern valley, and they all headed off in that direction. Hearing this, Master's hands paused slightly. He glanced at me with a hint of surprise, seemingly not expecting his usually dull-witted disciple to show such quick-wittedness at a critical moment. You were clever for once. Master sighed, a flicker of worry crossing his eyes. But the East is a dead end. It's only a matter of time before they realize they've been tricked. Once they catch on, this clinic, the only one within 10 miles, will be the first place they search. This place is by no means safe. As if to confirm Master's words, a strange noise was faintly audible amidst the sound of the wind and rain outside. The sound was extremely light yet rhythmic. It didn't sound like rain hitting leaves, but rather, the muffled thud of horse hooves trampling through the mud. A sudden jolt of alarm shot through me, and I subconsciously gripped the hem of my clothes. At that very moment, the man on the bamboo couch let out a low, muffled groan. His tightly closed lashes quivered violently under the dim glow of the oil lamp before he slowly opened his eyes. Those eyes were as dark as ink. The moment he took in the room's furnishings and saw my master and me standing before him, a sharp, freezing alertness instantly gathered within them. His right hand instinctively reached toward his side, but he found nothing. His sword had already been set aside on the table by my master. Who are you? His voice was hoarse, as if his throat were coated in grit. He struggled to sit up, but the movement jolted the wound in his chest, forcing a muffled groan of pain as his face turned even more deathly pale. Don't move if you don't want to die. Master pressed a hand against his shoulder. The grip wasn't heavy, yet it carried an irresistible steadiness. I am a physician, and this is my apprentice. You have 2 broken ribs. If you keep struggling and a jagged bone pierces your lungs, not even the great immortals could save you. Yingyue stared fixedly at Master before turning his gaze toward me, standing to the side with my somewhat unfocused eyes. He seemed to recognize me as the half-blind girl who had brought him medicine in the rock crevice earlier. The hostility in his eyes receded slightly, though the tension in his body did not relax. Something has happened. In the capital, Yingyue took a deep breath, suppressing the sharp pain in his chest, his voice low and urgent. I must head north immediately. Physician, if you can escort me out of these mountains, I promise you a lifetime of wealth and glory once my great task is complete. Master let out a cold snort, and while applying the medicinal paste to his wound, he said indifferently, I live here in seclusion seeking peace and quiet, not worldly riches. Your injuries were caused by military sabers, and those hunting you are certainly no benevolent sort. With the storm raging outside, you can't even step out of this room. let alone talk of heading north. Yingyue closed his eyes, his gaze filled with anxiety and resentment. Standing to the side, I tilted my head slightly, feigning a look of naive concern as I spoke timidly. Big brother, when you said something happened in the capital, does it have to do with the people chasing you? When I was taking shelter from the rain in the mountains earlier, I heard their leader talking to his men, and he sounded very scary. Yingyue snapped his eyes open, his gaze shooting toward me like a torch. What did they say? I shrunk my neck and twisted my fingers, pretending to try hard to remember. I couldn't hear very clearly. The rain was just too loud. I only vaguely heard them mention something about that the third prince had already made his move in the capital. They also said things like the old emperor has been poisoned, and forcing a dynamic change. Oh, they also mentioned a name. Yingyue, saying they must kill him in these woods and absolutely cannot let him head north alive to clear the court of evil. Big brother, who is Yingyue? Why do they want to kill him? Rumble, a sudden crack of thunder exploded outside the window, and a flash of ghastly white light instantly illuminated Yingjue's nearly contorted face. Jing Xian, you actually dare? Yingyue gritted his teeth so hard they nearly shattered. The veins on his forehead bulged, and his fists clenched with an audible crackle, completely disregarding the fresh blood seeping from his wounds once again. He was, after all, a prince seasoned by the battlefield and exceptionally skilled in strategy. The few fragmented words I provided were enough for him to instantly piece together the truth behind the entire conspiracy. The third prince, Jing Xian, poisoned father and locked down the capital. He knows I command the formidable armies of the north. Once I received word, I would surely head north to mobilize troops and purge the court of traitors. That is why he set an ambush here, on the only path I could take. Yingyue muttered to himself, his voice cold and devoid of warmth. He intends to use father's life to force me into a panic, then intercept and kill me midway. Once I am dead, the north will be leaderless, and he can ascend the throne as the rightful emperor. His deep gaze fixed on the void as his mind rapidly calculated the situation. Heading north from here, the official roads must already be blockaded layer by his death squads and local garrisons. If I show myself recklessly, it would be no different from walking into a trap. Watching Yingyue analyze the situation so clearly in such a short time, I breathed a secret sigh of relief. The tragedy of my past life had, at this moment, finally and quietly veered off its original course. Standing to the side and listening to these earth-shattering secrets, the master's expression shifted from initial shock to something complex and profound. He looked at Yingyue, and within those eyes that were usually as calm as still water, a long-lost sharpness faintly emerged. You are the current crown prince. Yingyue, the master spoke slowly, his voice not posing a question, but making a definitive statement. Yingyue did not deny it. He simply straightened his back. Even in this humble thatched cottage, the majesty belonging to the heir apparent did not diminish in the slightest. It is indeed I, old gentleman. If you save me today, you save the very foundations of the great Zhou dynasty. The master remained silent for a long time. With his hands behind his back, he walked to the window and watched the torrential rain outside, seemingly locked in a profound psychological struggle. I knew my master's past well. In his youth, he was a divine physician whose name shook the martial arts world. Both the righteous and the wicked had to show him great respect, and countless heroes of the realm owed him their lives. It was only later, weary of the endless cycles of gratitude and vengeance, that he assumed a new identity and went into hiding here. Master, I walked to his side, gently tugging at his sleeve and whispering, if those villains can't find Brother Crown Prince, they will surely turn this mountain upside down. When that happens, we won't be able to hide either. My words became the final weight that tipped the scales. Master turned around, looked at Yingyue, and let out a heavy sigh. So be it. Though I have no desire to involve myself in the affairs of the mortal world again, I cannot bear to see the common people suffer under the tyranny of a treacherous official's usurpation. He walked to the desk, picked up the brush, soaked it in thick ink, and swiftly wrote a few lines on the Xian paper. He then pulled a long-buried bronze seal from his robe and pressed it solemnly onto the signature. If the official roads are blocked, take the path of the outlaws. The master folded the letter and handed it to Yingyue. In my youth, I shared some history with Chief Lin of the Seven Provinces Escort Agency and several branch leaders of the Canal Gang. Take this letter to Qingfeng Town at the foot of the mountain. Someone there will naturally escort you past the government's eyes and take you north by water. Yingyue took the letter, and as he looked at the unique mark upon it, a flash of shock crossed his eyes. He clearly recognized the master's once-renowned reputation in the martial world. Just as he was about to offer his thanks, the sudden sound of hurried, chaotic hoofbeats echoed through the wind and rain outside. The sound drew closer until it finally stopped outside the bamboo fence of the clinic. Accompanied by the restless neighing of war horses and the sharp clatter of clashing blades, the small thatched cottage was instantly enveloped in a suffocating aura of murderous intent. To the cellar, I said, flipping open the hidden trapdoor at the base of the medicine cabinet. It was an underground earthen cellar that my master and I usually used to store precious medicinal herbs and protect them from moisture and insects. It was currently packed with prepared rehmannia and aconite, two herbs with incredibly potent properties and a heavy, earthy, bitter scent that was perfect for masking the sweet metallic smell of human blood. Yingyue gave me a deep, lingering look. Then without a moment's hesitation, he braced himself with one hand and slid down swiftly. I quickly pulled the trapdoor shut, dumped a heavy basket of semi-dried Sapochnikovia leaves over it, and grabbed a handful of realgar powder, scattering it into the air. In an instant, the pungent scent of realgar filled the entire inner chamber. Bang! The wooden door of the clinic was kicked open with violence. A gust of wild wind, heavy with cold rain, instantly sent the oil lamp in the main hall flickering violently. Search! Do not miss a single corner. A hoarse, cold voice rang out in the hall. My whole body shuddered, and I instinctively swept the medicine jar beside me to the floor. Amidst the crisp sound of shattering porcelain, I let out a terrified scream and scrambled outward on my knees, wailing, "Father! The bandits are here! Father! Save me! Halt! What are you shouting about?" A cold, calloused hand suddenly grabbed my collar and hoisted me off the ground. A steel blade, glinting with a cold light, was instantly pressed against my throat. "Officer, please have mercy." My master, Ji Tsung, hurried out from the inner room. He had changed into a set of faded, coarse cloth robes. His graying hair was somewhat disheveled, and his face was filled with panic and dread. To anyone watching, he looked like nothing more than a rural old man terrified by a sudden turn of events. "I am Ji Tsung, a physician serving these surrounding villages. May I ask what brings you officers here so late at night?" Master bowed deeply, his hands clasped in a respectful salute. The leading soldier was a man with a hideous, scarred face. He shot me a look of pure disgust. Seeing my eyes dull, vacant, and pupils dilated, truly the look of a half-blind girl, he tossed me to the ground like a piece of trash. "Ji Tsung?" The scarred man raised an eyebrow, seemingly searching his memory for the name. A moment later, the murderous intent in his eyes receded slightly. "You are that divine physician Ji who cured the county magistrate's mother of her chronic ailment?" "That is indeed this old man," my master replied with a submissive air, gesturing toward the inner room. "I was just preparing nourishing pills to regulate the magistrate's digestion. This girl is blind and clumsy. She deserves to die for startling you, sir." The scarred man let out a cold snort, though he did not lower his guard completely. He tilted his head slightly, and the death-sworn guards behind him immediately understood the signal. They drew their long swords and began thrusting wildly throughout the inner room. Sharp blades tore through medicine bags, sending countless herbs scattering across the floor. My heart was in my throat, my fingers clawing desperately into the crevices between the floor tiles. A moment later, the death guards who had been searching the premises emerged and shook their heads at the scarred man. "Leader, there is nothing inside but herbs. However, there is a very heavy scent of medicine and realgar. Realgar is used to ward off snakes from the mountains," Master explained hurriedly. "With the heavy rain tonight, the mountain snakes have been slithering into the house, so I had the girl sprinkle some realgar." The scarred man paced the room for a few steps, his hawk-like eyes finally landing on the medicinal dregs and the puddle of blood-streaked water on the ground. He crouched down, dipped a thick finger into the muddy water, and brought it to his nose to sniff. I held my breath, the palm beneath my sleeve already soaked. It was the blood flowing from the wound I had sustained earlier in the rocky crevice. This is human blood. Scarface's voice suddenly turned cold as he tightened his grip on the hilt of his blade. Have mercy, officer! My master dropped to his knees with a thud, pointing at my right hand as he said in a trembling voice, "It is indeed human blood. My worthless apprentice here accidentally cut her hand while slicing herbs just now. I was just about to bandage it for her when you gentlemen burst in. If you don't believe me, look at her palm." I took the cue and extended my trembling right hand. On my fair palm, the gash sliced by Yingjue's sword was still oozing beads of blood. The flesh turned outward, it truly looked like a fresh injury. Scarface stared at my wound for a long while, then glanced at the herb-cutting sickle scattered on the ground, and his expression finally softened. Move out! To the next location. With that command, the group of uninvited guests receded like a tide, vanishing into the vast darkness of the night. It wasn't until the sound of hoofbeats had completely faded that I finally collapsed onto the ground, gasping for air in great gulps. Master used the wall for support to stand up, closed and bolted the main gate again, then hurried over to the hidden compartment to pull Yingyue out. This place has been exposed, and the third prince's henchmen will only intensify their search day by day. Yingjue's face was pale, yet his eyes remained exceptionally calm. The county seat must be under martial law, and the exits will be heavily guarded. I must leave the city as soon as possible. Forcing our way out is a death sentence. Master's brow furrowed. After a moment of contemplation, he turned to look at me. Yingyue, do you still remember the lung-clearing decoction that the county magistrate's elderly mother must take every 3 days? A flash of inspiration struck me, and I instantly understood Master's meaning. 2 days later, the sky cleared after the rain, but the atmosphere in the county seat was heavy enough to be suffocating. Long queues had formed at the city gates, where a dozen martial artists in heavy armor, their temples bulging with inner power, held portraits, conducting rigorous inspections of every passerby. Halt! What are you carrying in that cart? The city gate guards stopped our ox cart. I sat beside a high stack of medicine baskets, clutching a clay jar and pretending to tremble with fear. My master, meanwhile, offered a sycophantic smile as he handed over a red-headed official document stamped with the seal of the county magistrate's office. Officer, this is a travel permit specially approved by the county vice magistrate. The old lady's chronic illness flared up suddenly yesterday, and she urgently needs this load of fresh Dendrobium officinale and lily bulbs. These herbs must be decocted at the hot spring villa in the southern suburbs within 4 hours of being harvested, or they will lose all their medicinal potency. If anything happens to the old lady, a lowly person like me couldn't possibly bear the responsibility. The guard took the permit and examined it. The seal was indeed genuine. Still uneasy, he drew his long sword, preparing to thrust it into the herb basket. Officer, you mustn't! I suddenly shrieked, appearing utterly terrified as I tumbled off the ox cart. The clay pot in my arms shattered instantly, splashing a foul-smelling, nauseating black liquid all over the ground. As the black water hit the earth, it actually began to emit faint wisps of white smoke, releasing waves of a pungent stench. Oh no! My 5 venoms powder. Seeing this, Master slapped his thigh and wailed in grief. Officer, get back! This is a highly toxic concoction I use to exterminate the venomous snakes on the mountain behind the villa. If it touches your skin, your flesh will rot. If you breathe it in, you'll be dizzy within moments. As soon as the guards heard the word venomous and caught a whiff of that nauseating stench, their faces paled with terror, and they scrambled backward while covering their noses and mouths. The city gate instantly descended into chaos. Go! 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 Get out of here! A guard shouted, waving his sleeve, not wanting to keep us there for a single second longer. Master quickly helped me onto the cart, took the ox's lead, and hurried through the city gates. At the very bottom of a pile of foul-smelling herb baskets, Yingyue lay curled within a hidden compartment, listening to the rhythmic creaking of the ox cart's wheels. His hands tightly gripped the letter, the key to mobilizing the forces of the Greenwood. At Qingfeng Ferry, the reeds rustled in the autumn wind, and a thin layer of morning mist rose from the river's surface. The rendezvous passenger boat was already moored beside a concealed wooden walkway. The boatman, having secured the ropes, was scanning the surroundings with a vigilant expression. Yingyue stepped out from the hidden compartment at the bottom of the herb baskets. Though his clothes were somewhat disheveled after 2 days of jolting travel, his demeanor regained its profound and unshakable composure the moment he saw the light of day again. Master was speaking in low tones with the boat captain, verifying the secret signals. I leaned against the ox cart, my eyes still slightly squinted and out of focus. Yet I could feel Yingjue's gaze resting heavily upon me. He took a long stride, walking slowly until he stood before me. Your name is Yingyue. His voice was deep, not a question, but an assertion. Yes, Your Excellency. I lowered my head slightly, folding my hands in front of me as I performed a proper commoner's salute. That day at the narrow pass, you didn't stumble upon me by accident. You went there specifically to find me. In the clinic, you led me to deduce the political situation in the capital. Every word seemed naive, yet every step was a calculated guide. Before the city gates, you deliberately shattered the medicine jar to escape using lethal poison. Such temperament and courage far exceed those of ordinary people. Yingyue stood with his hands behind his back, looking down at me, his deep eyes flashing with a gaze that was almost scrutinizing. A half-blind physician living in seclusion in the mountains could never be so sharp regarding the titles of the princes in the capital or the dynamics of a palace coup. Yingyue, who exactly are you? He truly is the crown prince who, in my past life, was able to fight the third prince until the very end. No matter how much I tried to conceal it, he still saw through my intelligence during these few days of acquaintance. I did not panic. I merely lifted my head slightly, meeting his gaze with eyes that appeared lifeless to outsiders. My tone calm and subtle. Noble sir, all things in this world have a cause and an effect. Who I am is not important. What matters is that my master and I are but commoners seeking a corner of peace in a chaotic world. And you, sir, are the one who can bring peace to this land. Yingyue stared at me for a long time. Suddenly, he let out a low chuckle. There was no killing intent in that laugh. Instead, it carried a hint of relief and appreciation. What a fine piece under heaven. This is. He drew a piece of mutton fat jade from his robes, snow white and exquisite in texture. Carved upon it was a Chongming bird with outspread wings, and at the very bottom, a discreetly engraved character. Jew. He pulled my hand toward him and pressed the jade, still warm from his body, firmly into my palm. In the capital, I have grown accustomed to the hidden daggers and false pretenses of the court. Since you are unwilling to speak, I shall not force you. Yingyue looked at me, his voice carrying a new, unquestionable gravity. This is my personal token. If I succeed in purging the court of traitors and restoring order to the realm, bring this to the capital to find me. When that day comes, I shall proclaim to all under heaven that you are my adopted sister, bestow upon you a royal title, and grant you a lifetime free of worry. I gripped the heavy jade tightly, my fingertips tracing the patterns of the Chongming bird, and bowed deeply. This humble girl sees off the crown prince. May your highness ride the wind in waves, and successfully quell the chaos. Yingyue said no more. He turned around, lifted the hem of his robe, and strode onto the passenger boat. As the bamboo pole pushed through the river water, the boat drifted further away, eventually vanishing into the vast river mist. My master and I did not linger at Qingfeng Ferry. We headed back to the medical clinic by oxcart that same day. The days that followed were as calm as a pool of stagnant water. Yet beneath this stillness, suffocating undercurrents were surging. The search by the third prince's henchmen gradually subsided after half a month. They seemed to have finally realized that their target was no longer in these mountains and forests, and they began to retreat northward like a receding tide. My master and I returned to our former life of practicing medicine, spending our days gathering herbs, drying them, and seeing patients. However, the frequency of my master's trips to town increased noticeably. Each time he returned, he brought back more than just daily necessities. He also carried secret reports from the martial arts world, written in tiny script on silk paper. The winds of change are blowing through the capital. Late one night, my master burned a secret letter by the lamplight. With a solemn expression, he said to me, "The third prince has declared that the emperor is in poor health and has taken over as regent. He has begun purging his opponents, and half of the veteran officials in court are under house arrest." However, 5 days ago, news suddenly arrived from the northern border. Crown Prince Yingyue appeared safely at the northern frontier camp. Holding the Son of Heaven's sword, he has led 300,000 soldiers of the Northern Guard in a swearing-in ceremony to march south. Pointing directly at the capital, I sat at the medicine desk, rhythmically crushing angelica root with a stone mortar and pestle, listening to my master's words. My hand paused slightly before resuming its steady rhythm. Everything was different from my previous life. In that life, Yingyue died in the mountain forests, and the third prince usurped power in silence. In this life, however, the true gambit has only just begun. The 300,000 soldiers of the Jinbei army are the elite of the elite. Now that Yingyue is on his guard, the third prince's chances of victory are less than 30%. Master, dawn is breaking. I looked at the sky outside the window as it gradually turned pale and said softly, "Once this snow stops, the winner in the capital should finally be decided." The days passed one by one in anticipation. When the first snow of the mountains fell, the entire world turned into a piercing, blinding white. It was not until the 8th day of the 12th lunar month that a sudden, urgent clatter of hooves shattered the tranquility of the medical clinic. The sound of the hooves was incredibly hurried, striking the muddy roads where the first snow had just begun to melt, producing a dull yet powerful thud. My master and I exchanged a look. He slowly set down the medicine pestle, his right hand instinctively reaching into his sleeve where he kept his defensive gold needles hidden. I listened intently. The hoofbeats were uniform and rhythmic, showing no signs of a chaotic flight, but rather carrying a sense of well-trained majesty. A moment later, 3 tall horses came to a halt outside the bamboo fence of the clinic. The man in the lead dismounted and pushed open the wicker gate, bringing in a gust of cold wind mingled with ice and snow. He wore a heavy black cloak, beneath which a corner of a flying fish uniform was visible, and at his waist hung the spring embroidery blade unique to the emperor's personal guard. I narrowed my eyes slightly, and by the dim light, I could clearly see the scroll of bright yellow silk he held in his hands. It was an imperial edict. The soldier did not act with the usual arrogance of a government official. Instead, he stood before the hall with profound respect. His gaze swept over my master and me, finally coming to rest on the mutton-fat jade pendant I held in my hand. His expression turned solemn, and he immediately dropped to one knee, cupping his hands in a formal salute. I, the deputy commander of the Black Armor Guards, acting upon the imperial decree of the newly enthroned emperor, pay my respects to the commandery Princess Onping. His voice was sonorous, sending ripples of echoes through the empty medical clinic. The new emperor has ascended the throne, Commandery Princess Onping. Hearing those words, the heart that had been suspended in my chest for months finally settled completely at this very moment. "Please rise, officer." I tucked the jade pendant securely back into my sleeve and stepped slightly to the side, avoiding his formal bow. "I am but a simple woman and have been out of touch. I do not know the situation in the capital. Is His Highness, no, is His Majesty well?" The commander stood up, though travel-worn and covered in dust. His brows were filled with an irrepressible joy. "Rest assured, Princess. Last month, His Majesty led the Northern Army under the banner of clearing the court of traitors, and the army surrounded the capital. The evidence of the third Prince Jing Xian's usurpation and his murder of the late emperor was indisputable, leading the Imperial Guard to defect on the battlefield. The rebel Jing Xian has been executed before the Hall of Supreme Harmony. His Majesty ascended the throne 3 days ago, declaring the new era. Qingping." He held up a scroll of bright yellow imperial decree with both hands. Speaking respectfully, His Majesty's first decree after ascending the throne was to confer upon you the title of Princess Onping, granting you a residence in the capital, 1,000 taels of gold, and the taxes from 500 households. His Majesty specifically instructed that if the princess wishes to enter the capital, we are to escort you immediately. However, if the princess cannot bear to leave the tranquility of the mountains, the status and offerings of the princess's manor will not be diminished in the slightest, allowing the princess to live freely in the mountains. Furthermore, for his merit in saving the emperor, the divine physician Ji is specially bestowed with a golden plaque reading, National Master of the Healing Touch. And the Imperial Academy of Medicine awaits his arrival at any time. Upon hearing this, Master merely gave a faint smile and pressed his palms together in a respectful bow. I am but a man of the wilderness, accustomed to the company of herbs. I am deeply honored by His Majesty's favor, but I shall decline the appointment to the Imperial Academy of Medicine. As for this golden plaque, I shall brazenly accept it. Hanging it before this clinic may at least deter the harassment of local thugs. The commander had clearly been briefed by Yingyue beforehand, for he showed no surprise at Master's refusal, merely responding with a respectful yes. I took the heavy imperial decree. Upon the bright yellow satin, the dragons embroidered with gold thread looked lifelike, emitting a faint scent of sandalwood. Scenes that I had never even experienced in my past life flashed through my mind at this moment like a revolving lantern. In my previous life, by this time, I would have already become a set of withered bones lying on a desolate, rocky hill. Yingyue would have died in the stone crevices of the first thread of sky, his ambitions and aspirations turning into a feast for the mountain beasts. Meanwhile, the third prince, Jing Xian, would have ascended the throne smoothly. His tyranny would have brought misery to all living souls, and this mountain forest that raised me would have eventually been reduced to scorched earth in the fires of war. But now, I hold a warm imperial decree in my hands, and my master stands safely by my side. Outside the window, snowflakes fall silently onto the clean courtyard. There is no trace of blood, only the serenity of early winter. Yingyue did not break his word. He did not act like those cold-blooded, ungrateful emperors who erase the memories of their humble beginnings after ascending the throne. Instead, with the highest level of formality, he proclaimed his protection over me to the entire world. From this day forward, I am no longer that half-blind physician girl at the mercy of others, who could freeze or starve to death at any moment. I am the Princess Anping of the Great Zhou dynasty, and standing behind me is the supreme ruler of this land. Princess, His Majesty asked me to deliver a message to you. The commander lowered his voice, his expression softening. His Majesty says that your elder brother is in the capital, and whenever his younger sister is free, she is welcome to come and enjoy the heavy snow at Qingtian Gate at any time. My eyes grew slightly misty, yet the corners of my lips curled upward. I must trouble the commander to convey my words to His Majesty. Holding the imperial decree to my chest, I bowed deeply toward the direction of the capital. From these mountains, your younger sister respectfully wishes His Majesty a long life without end, and may the great Zhou dynasty stand firm forever. The commander took his orders and departed swiftly with his men. The sound of galloping hoofs rose once more, but this time, they were no longer the suffocating pursuit of enemies, but the joyful heralds of peace. The snow was falling heavier and heavier. Leaning against the doorframe, I watched the fast horses vanish at the end of the mountain path, which was now a blur of white. Master walked up beside me and gave my shoulder a gentle pat. Little girl, the medicine is brewed. Drink it while it's hot. Master's voice was as gentle and calm as ever. Coming! I gave a soft response and turned around. Although my vision remained blurred, the path ahead had never felt as wide and bright as it did now. The story has come to an end. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to subscribe, like, share, and comment. Thank you.